Hey, welcome to Scratching the Surface. I'm Jarrett Fuller, and this is a podcast about why we're designers. On this week's episode, I am joined by the designer and educator, Mary Banas. Mary's independent creative practice called Yes is More spans research, teaching, and design. She also collaborates with Breanne Trammell and is on the faculty at the California College of Arts. In this conversation, Mary and I talk about her childhood interest in both art and wanting to be a teacher, and then the sort of roundabout journey that eventually brought her back to teaching design as she does today. We also talk about the value of an expanded practice and moving between disciplines, and how to structure critique in the classroom so that it's helpful for every student. I've been a fan of Mary's and the way she thinks for years now, and just had so much fun in this conversation. I hope that you enjoy it as much as I did. If you're a fan of the podcast and want to help support it, you can become a member for $5 a month or $50 a year. Members get an exclusive monthly newsletter that features behind-the-scenes content, links and articles from former guests about design and writing and criticism, as well as previews of the upcoming episodes. Scratching the Surface is fully supported through these memberships, so if you like the show and want to help with its ongoing production and want to see it continue to live in the world, I hope that you consider joining and becoming a part of the membership program. Thank you so much for listening, and enjoy this conversation with Mary Banas. I should run the numbers on this. I don't have data on this exactly, but I think the majority of the people that I talk to on the podcast come from some other background or area of study before coming into graphic design. It seems like most people in their undergrad have studied something else. And I'm always, when I talk to those people, I'm always jealous a little bit because I studied graphic design in undergrad and then went to grad school and studied graphic design. And I kind of wonder if I missed out on some other area of study. And you are like me in that you studied graphic design both in undergrad and in graduate school.
Yeah.
And so I kind of want to start talking about that. When you were headed into undergrad, how did you get interested in graphic design, or what was your kind of knowledge of graphic design at that time?
Yeah, so that was 1999, and I had grown up with computers. Like, we had an Apple IIe and we had an LC3.
Oh,
but
nice.
I didn't actually know what graphic design was called until I was looking at colleges. And I went on like a college tour, and I was looking at the art department, and they had this table of stuff, and it was like T-shirts with words on them. And I was like, wait a minute, this is a major? Like, I want to do this major. So I think I had always been good at art and like Michael Beirut would say. And I also was always interested in like language and communication. So I didn't have the desire to study art and become an artist when I was in high school. I think I wanted to do something more practical. Like, I'm a practical person. So I think that's how I ended up. I found design to be like the perfect mix because it was like, visual, and it is composition, it's balance, it's layout. It's like all these elements of art that I had studied, but it's communication, which is power.
I have two questions just to kind of go a little bit deeper on that story. When you saw that table at that college visit with those shirts that had words on them, what was it about that you were like, oh, this is kind of all the stuff that I've already been interested in? What were you able to articulate that in that moment?
I don't think so. I think I was just like, what is this? And yeah, I could do this as a major. I think I was at the point where I was kind of wondering, when you're like a junior in high school, everyone asks you, they're like, what are you going to study in college? Like, what are you going to do? Where are you going to go to school? What do you want to be? And I was really interested in being a teacher, and I was really interested in art. And everyone said, well, why don't you be an art teacher?
Yeah.
And it got to the point where I had come up with this little story. I was like, just because you like tomatoes and you like soup doesn't mean you like tomato soup. because people didn't understand that, like, just because you like those two things, I didn't want to be an art teacher, but look at me now, like, um, uh, little
Yeah.
Mary didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, I want to come back to teaching. Obviously, that's a big part of what I want to talk to you about. But the reason I asked that question is because I think, hearing you say that, it reminds me of myself. And I was a kid who was very into art stuff as a kid, but also liked reading and words and that sort of thing. And I remember when I realized, when I heard the term graphic design and when I saw what graphic design was, it was this kind of like, oh, all of this stuff that I've been doing actually is a thing and people get paid for this and this is a job. And it was like this kind of big revelation. I was kind of curious if seeing those shirts,
Mm.
it was that kind of immediate thing, but it was just like, oh, what is this?
Oh yeah. Well, what year was that for you?
Uh, that was probably like 2003, 2004.
Yeah. Well, that's like when I graduated from college. So I
Yeah.
feel
Yeah.
like design. I also think, people were study graphic design in high school now, or
Yeah.
if I didn't do yearbook, but had I done yearbook, I would have been studying design, or if I had done like the school paper or something.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting because I didn't do any of that stuff in high school. It was just like right outside the world that I knew. And so it was this kind of very interesting life shifting moment when I
Right.
discovered it. But you see these shirts and you then join this program and you're in these classes. What was that like? Were you kind of into it?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I loved it. Um, I was really into it. I found a community of people inside. I was at the University of Connecticut, which is a really big school. And I found this community of people in the School of Art and in the design program that became really good friends of mine. And because the school is a liberal arts school, it's you study everything, and so you take sculpture, painting, photography, drawing, as well as the classes that are specific to your major of graphic design. Which, when I was a student there, I actually have a BFA in communication design. That's what it was called,
Right.
but it's the same thing. And I was really grateful, still am today, for the fact that I took painting
Right.
and printmaking, because and sculpture, like everything. Just because design is, you end up dabbling in everything. Like if your career is
Yeah.
ends up being broad enough, like you're like, oh, those dimensional things I was doing are
Yeah.
actually, it's helpful. I have the confidence. I had the confidence when I was a young designer to do things that were less familiar to me, just because I had played in so many different medias.
I don't mean to jump around your background a bit, but that's what you just said is something that I was really interested in talking to you about, in that your design practice today is something that is across, not just across different types of design mediums, but also across different um, kind of different areas of work, whether it is more traditional graphic design or something that's more research based or writing based, and then teaching.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm interested in that kind of expansion of practice. And so you th- do you think that kind of came from that early undergrad education of having to do all of that stuff?
That's a good question. Maybe it's just like being in like omnivore, or being
Yeah.
like I'm at an all you can eat buffet for design, like all the time.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. It's something I actually struggle with myself, because I feel like when I look at my peers, they all have a really specific thing that they do, and it's really focused, and that's what they
Mm,
talk about all the time.
mhm, mhm.
And my interests have always been more of like the spectrum, or like, yeah, this range, where it's
Yeah.
like some of the work you're like, if you're really a traditionalist, you'll be like, well, how is that design or something, because it's maybe reading more as it's
Right.
conceptual, or it's reading more as art. um, like using design's always the medium, though,
Right.
in my work, for sure.
What you said about looking at your peers and feeling like they have a specific thing and maybe a sense of jealousy or ease, does that why does that bother you, or why, I don't see you as somebody who would even want kind of a one specific thing.
I guess because in academia, you have to be able to talk about
Mm-hmm.
what it is that you're doing in a way that's is sort of packaged so that, you can communicate what it is that you would offer like an institution.
The question that I guess I'm trying to ask is, how do working across those different fields, working across those different mediums, kind of those different tracks, how do they filter back into each other? So how does the research work? Does that then have an influence on, more commercial or client work? Or how does the client work play a part in the teaching that you do? Do you see connections between those things?
Definitely. And I think it's actually more of when you think about the word practice, and it's
Mm-hmm.
like the thing that you're doing over and over or you're doing every day. I
Mm-hmm.
think that the research, engaging with research in a way where I'm being vulnerable or I'm taking risks, really helps me have more empathy for my students and be able to help them through their process in a way that maybe I wouldn't be able to do if I was practicing professionally only. That's
Right.
I think that's different. And that also, I can also bring that into the classroom. And then being in the classroom with the students, and that's just like such a gift because
Yeah.
they're showing me like their incredible vulnerability and also their strength. And like, that's something that sort of like feeds anything I do
Right.
outside of the classroom, what
Yeah.
that's like. It's some special magic. So I think it's about like, it's for me, it's always like, like a little bit like design's a little athletic. It's a little bit like working out or something. And so if I'm
Mm-hmm.
working out on the research side,
Mm-hmm.
it, it'll be a lighter lift in the professional work. If I'm working out in the professional work, I
I
can
love that.
I can more quickly make something on the research side because I'm like, for example, maybe I've just, how sometimes it doesn't matter how old you are, but you'll pick up a new skill in Photoshop or InDesign or something, or a new like quick way
Yeah.
of doing something.
That's actually a really nice analogy. I feel like we should backtrack a little bit because we were kind of talking about your undergrad experience and then we jumped right into your work
Mm-hmm.
today. So did you after and I want to kind of like go back in time and connect it back to this conversation. So after undergrad, um, did you work as a designer immediately after that?
I did, yeah. I got a BFA in communication design from the University of Connecticut, and I had also studied abroad in London for a semester. And then
Okay.
I was living in Connecticut, back in my like childhood bedroom in my parents' house.
Mm-hmm.
And the first job I got was actually an internship at the Hartford Courant, which is,
Mm.
I think it's one of the oldest independent newspapers, but
Oh, okay.
this was before InDesign was the thing that they used to lay the paper out, and it was laid out in this other PC program, which for me was like kind of gnarly. Like, I didn't like it because it wasn't as flexible. But one thing I got to do at the paper that was cool was, well, two things. One, sitting in on the editorial meetings. I really enjoyed that. And then the other thing was, they would let me do like illustrations for like spot illustrations or section header
Mm,
illustrations. So like
mm-hmm.
one of the inserts in the paper was called Cal, and it's like a calendar. It was cut shorter, and it was like it's a calendar of like events happening, in Hartford, or in the tri, like, I don't know, Tri-City area or something. And I would do like the design for what that was going to look like. But it would
Oh,
be, I would make
nice.
something by hand out of, like, I would make artwork and then we would, scan it in or something. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a section, a gardening section, and I did a bunch of cut paper. The point being, they gave me some latitude, I think, because the actual design part of that job was really limited by the software. So it wasn't that interesting for an intern or for like a younger person to do. But I really appreciated that. And I liked working at the paper because of the limitation and the schedule. Like, the publishing schedules are exciting. You have the limitation of time. And so you you only have so much time to like put something together and make it happen. And
Mm-hmm.
after that, I worked at Yale Alumni Magazine as
Oh,
assistant art director. And that
okay.
magazine was designed by Pentagram, so it's really
Mm-hmm.
good. It had really good bones. And for an alumni magazine, it's very well done. It's like reads as kind of like a general interest magazine. And I learned a ton about photography from the different photographers that we had, freelance photographers. And I learned a ton about layout and InDesign, and also about printing because I went on all the press checks. And that was a great opportunity for me. I was given a lot of agency there as well. I had a seat at the table. A good idea can come from anywhere is something that
Right.
Catherine Lassola, the editor of the magazine, would say.
So when did you, I have two questions. When did you decide to go back to school? And
Mm.
why did you want to go back to school?
Yeah, well, I actually had I ended up having like a panic attack
Hmm.
because I knew I wanted to do something else. So I was at the
Hmm.
magazine for like 3 years, and it's a very small staff. And the art director there is Mark Zarolo. He's still the art director there, and he's my
Hmm.
mentor too. He was my teacher at the University of Connecticut. He was my colleague when I taught at the University of Connecticut, and he's just been like, he's my mentor. So knowing though that you're at a place where there isn't there wasn't like another there isn't another place to go. It's the kind of assistant art
Hmm.
director is a position where like you're going to do it and like you could do it for a long time, but
Yeah.
if you want to grow or expand, it's not necessarily like a forever job type of thing, which
Hmm.
honestly what design job is a forever job except for
Right.
your own
Right.
company. So yeah, I was kind of like, there wasn't like a place in Connecticut that I wanted to work. I didn't want to move to New York. It was like at the time felt too intense for me, and I knew I wanted to learn more about design and grow as a designer, and I didn't know how or what. I didn't know how I could do that.
Yeah. Did
And
you know? Did you know what you wanted to learn? Like, it's interesting to hear you say, I wanted to learn more about design. What was that more, or was it just that you felt like you were missing something and you didn't know what that was?
I wanted to be better, and I think maybe not in these words, but I wanted to develop my own point of view, and like I wanted to develop what would be my own practice, but
Mm.
I didn't necessarily know. It's kind of like just I was just looking for more like graphic confidence, I think.
And so you then go to RISD and you get your MFA at RISD. And th- this is kind of why I was asking you those previous questions about what happened after undergrad and then why you wanted to go back to school, is because I feel like, as somebody who, this is the first time we've ever spoken aside from emails and some tweets to each other, but as somebody who has kind of watched your work for a couple years, I feel like so much of the things that you are doing and working on and thinking about a lot of it can be traced back to RISD and the RISD curriculum and the RISD faculty. And I'm kind of curious about that experience and how that perhaps, helps set up this teaching career that you're on, or this kind of research and writing that you do, and kind of all of these different things that we were talking about. I feel like RISD was the place where a lot of that really started to come to life.
I guess so, but wouldn't that be like true for a lot of people who go to grad school? uh, I mean, I TA'd every semester that I was there. I was definitely interested in becoming a student of teaching.
Hmm.
Um, I was actually Lucy's TA, which was really fun
Oh,
uh,
nice.
for one semester. But I got to TA for a lot of different people when I was there, and yeah,
I don't mean to say that, your work looks like RISD work, or that it's like has a
yeah,
certain
no, no, no.
thing, but just from what I know of RISD, from the faculty that I've talked to there, and from what I know of you, it seems like I see connections there that I was
Uh
kind of
huh.
curious about.
I want to know what those. I want you to tell me what you see.
very simply, I think this idea that we're talking about of kind of working across a lot of different disciplines and kind of approaching design from a lot of different ways is a very RISD thing.
Hmm.
Um, that RISD seems like a place where experimentation and pushing the boundaries and playing with the containers is encouraged. And I see that in your work. I see that in the writing that I've read of yours, and I imagine that as a teacher, you kind of think about that also. And then the kind of subcategory there is this kind of visual research that you're doing. To me, always when I see work like that, that seems like a very RISD,
Oh,
um,
yeah.
a RISD thing.
That's cool. Yeah, I mean, I definitely learned so much there in a very short amount of time. And there's definitely still things I think about from some of the classes that I had. Um, and there were works that I was shown there, just like in, that we studied that I still think about, like the Solo Wit autobiography book, which I did a project about. Rob Gianpietro showed it to us in our seminar class. And I mean, it's just like, I suppose I could have seen that book somewhere else, but that's where I saw it. And it, it had a big
Right.
influence on me because I wasn't really looking necessarily super critically at everything. I was pretty critical though, just like I think I'm a critical person, like the way that I perceive the world. And I like to, I like to analyze things and wonder why they're the way that they are. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I mean, it was a very dense experience there. And I think that the not sort of having a style or like a formal um, look and not being too tied to um, professional graphic design are both really strong parts of that program
Yeah.
because I think that it's if you're going to go to grad school, it's important to do that kind of deep sort of research and discovery for yourself, and also to be asking really critical questions about what design actually is. Like, why are we doing it?
Yeah. So you TA'd while you were at RISD, you TA'd every semester. When did you start teaching or thinking that teaching could be another avenue of this practice that you were building?
Yeah, I taught actually there. My first class I taught at
Okay.
RISD, it was a winter session class. So they have that spot in between spring and in between fall and spring. They have winter session, which is a
Mhm.
longer, actually, sorry, a short semester session. And with Jen McGathan, we taught a class. It was sort of like graphic design. It was like a introduction to graphic design class for majors and not like for people who didn't for freshmen, I guess. So people who weren't yet decided what their major was going to be. And it went well, but looking back, you're just like, oh wow, we gave them assignments that were so sophisticated. The funny thing about teaching at RISD is the students can handle a lot of stuff. And so it kind of spoils you as an educator, actually, I will say. But that's what happened. And then the second time I ever taught was at the University of Bridgeport, and that was
Okay.
also a freshman or introductory class. Um, it was called Intro to Computer Applications, but I really shaped the syllabus around. So it was sort of like how to use the programs, like InDesign and Illustrator. But I did it
Okay.
through projects, like in my syllabus. So I sort of like made different projects that they could be conceptual
Mm-hmm.
about, or bring an idea into, and then learn how to use the programs. But that was kind of tough because it was in the evening and it was a computer class, and um, technology overwhelms. At the time, technology was overwhelming to the students. I actually think that the students now are so like native to technology that
Yeah.
you don't even have to show them Photoshop. Like they know more about Photoshop than like you or I will ever know.
Yeah. I do not even try to teach software
No, I
anymore
mean, I
at
don't
all.
think it's anyone's dream. Maybe it is actually. I don't know, but it's not
No.
my dream. I've never
Yeah.
been, I've never sought it out. It's sort of like at the beginning of your career, you'll teach whatever is given to you.
Yeah. I don't even, I will put some, like YouTube or Linda tutorials in the syllabus of, basic stuff or stuff that might be helpful for the class. And it's like, if you want to learn this, or if you don't know this, or you want to get better, you can look here, but we're not going to spend time in class doing tech demos. That doesn't seem like an efficient use of our
Right.
time. But I want to go back to something that you said at the beginning, that as a kid you were interested in art, and you also kind of thought maybe you wanted to be a teacher, and everyone was telling you, oh, you could be an art teacher, and now you now are kind of an art teacher. Um, what was that like when you kind of realized that you liked teaching, and that this was a part of your career
I
now?
mean, I always liked teaching, and I always wanted to be a teacher. It was that I didn't want to be my idea of an art teacher was like elementary school or like K through 8 or
Mm,
something.
yeah.
And
Yeah.
actually, in high school, I did a project in high school, like an independent. I took an independent study, and it was sort of like you develop your own project. And my project was teaching um, like third graders how to draw. No, sixth graders how to draw, which you can imagine was really difficult, like drawing from
Mm-hmm.
life. They came in and they
Mm-hmm.
wanted to make like comics, and and I was like, here's a still life of chairs. Um, so it was really hard,
Yeah.
but um, it was really fun. So I think sometimes you don't know what you're like walking toward, and everyone else can see it.
I mean, so you teach basically all levels, undergrad and graduate students, right?
Yes.
What is that? I do also. And I find it so fascinating, especially this semester. I'm teaching sophomore
Mm.
typography in the morning, and then I go over to another school and I teach graduate thesis. So it's like the two farthest. It's like students' first design class that they ever
Mm-hmm.
take, and then graduate thesis students where it's I'm playing a completely different role. I find that really interesting. I'm curious kind of how you think about your teaching, and the role of uh, the role that you play in the classroom. How do you kind of see your job as a teacher depending on the level, and does that change?
I like teaching on the different levels. I think that it's the best of both worlds. Like they play off each other. They have different strengths. Like I think I also maybe would get like it keeps me more engaged because there's a complexity to uh,
Mhm.
flipping between. Although I usually
Exactly.
just I don't do them in the same semester. I usually do grad in the fall and undergrad in the spring. And my undergrad at CCA is
Oh, interesting.
graphic design two, so it's sophomores. It's the sophomore studio. And then in the
Okay.
fall is that year zero studio, which is the studio graphic design for the 3 year people that are on the 3 year track. It's their first year. But this fall, I'm
Hmm.
also teaching a class, a grad elective, which is called Open Publication Studio Forming Ideas. And that's half
Mm.
MFA writing students and half art students. So
Oh,
yeah,
interesting.
it's a really cool class. Um, within the writing students, there's like a poet, there's someone who writes short stories, a novelist, an essayist. And then on the art side, we have graphic design, we have printmaking and performance art, photography and video, sculpture, um, and two more graphic designers. So it's a very beautiful group of people, diverse and rich. And so,
Yeah.
really interesting discussions, really wonderful collaborations can happen where, like, different people have such strong skills. Oh, there's a visual and critical studies student too. So it's really nice because everyone has their thesis. So everyone has this one thing that they're very deeply, they've been thinking about, writing about, making work about for the last like one and a half years, or one, let me think, two. They're in
Hmm.
the second year. if they're in a 2-year program, they're in their second year. So at least for a full year, they've been thinking and writing and making about it. But it's really nice to have that shared space where some people are like, oh, I want to learn a little bit more about design. And some of the designers are like,
Hmm.
I have no idea how I want to write about this thing. And watching the students just
Yeah.
be able to help each other really easily is pretty rewarding. And then the other thing about the class is all the publications get made on the Reso. So we can use the
Okay.
limitations of the Reso as a way to keep it constrained in a way that is like still fun, and
Right.
you have all those fun colors, and like it's very forgiving for anybody, designers,
Hmm.
or with designers it's like they like to push the edge of like how aligned can they make it, and how many colors can they play with. And then the artists, maybe
Yeah.
they can play with the roughness, or like vice versa. But the limitations of the machine itself are a nice constraint, I think.
So the class is they're making a publication. What is the kind of structure of the class, or what is the publication is just a piece of writing that they write and design about their thesis?
So it should serve their thesis. It doesn't necessarily need to be about their thesis. And so the
Okay.
structure of the class that I'm providing is really it's just prompts. Like I'm trying to give them prompts and frameworks so that they can, since they're grad students and they're thesis students, they can bring to that framework what they need to serve their thesis. So the first prompt was like introduce your thesis through a book of questions. And I gave them like
Mm,
a size, just because it's easier for the first, some of these people, it's the first time they're ever making a book. So I gave them like
right.
a
Right.
page size, and, a lot of details about how, like I showed them zines and I showed them simple books and things. And then the second one is like, it's called an essay, but that just means that whatever they make has to have a strong and clear point of view. And
Mm,
paired with the essay is a bumper sticker, which is also, I love the bumper sticker as a container for
interesting.
design, because you have to actually distill something down into a very small space. But
Right.
usually it's a very strong and loud message. And I appreciate that I appreciate what the bumper sticker can give us as a gift. If you're really trying to, if you
Hmm.
think about your thesis and you're trying to distill an idea
Yeah.
into a bumper sticker, it's like, okay. There's an exercise that people do sometimes where they're like, okay, write the time, like what's the Time magazine cover? This is something from like my advertising days, but what's the Time magazine cover like after your product is really successful? Like what do people write about it? And that's a way to think about how do you want to advertise your product? Have you heard that before?
Yeah. That's I've not heard that, but I'm thinking about my thesis students now, and I feel like the bumper sticker is such. I think I'm going to
You
steal
can
that.
steal it. I have a tool actually.
Okay.
Yeah, we could talk about it.
Yeah, that it's an interesting idea. I mean, because the issue that I find with thesis students is especially about right now in the semester where they're kind of midway through midway through the first semester of their second year is that they it's really easy to lose the thread of the thesis right about now, and it gets bigger and bigger of what they want to talk about, and the themes start to
Hmm.
uh, start to like splinter out into a bunch of other things. And so it's how do you then condense this back down to what the thesis is actually about? And that's a great way to really narrow things down quickly, or at least start to think about, well, what is the one main idea here? I love that.
Yeah, it could be every week they make a new one or something, because there is an evolution to it for
Yeah.
sure.
How does teaching generally, but also, working with grad students on thesis topics that eventually they will know more about it than you than you will, and kind of, you're learning from them just as much. How does teaching and working with these students, does this change, or has it changed how you think about graphic design, or what graphic design is or can be?
Oh, I think definitely. Yeah. I think my ideas about what graphic design is or can be have changed a lot just since I
Mhm.
graduated from undergrad, I would say. And I think
Yeah.
some of that's the world, and, how fast and fluid the media is around us. It's, I think, the rise of capitalism and the what capitalism is doing to the planet is changing my ideas about design, and what design is and what it's for. And I don't know, having worked in advertising also, I think we're really lucky to be in academia where you can actually ask critical questions of design itself. Because if we're not
Right.
doing it in academia, then where are we doing it? So yeah, it definitely has changed. I think if anything, I feel that I think the most important thing to do now is, well, the most important thing for any time is I want to bring more of a criticality. I want everyone to have more of a criticality, like when they walk into a room, every person.
Hmm.
And I think that something that design does really well is design can sugarcoat a message that might not be. Design can make
Hmm.
something look really easy, that isn't, or it
Hmm.
can make something look good that's actually evil. And I think, if I can teach or bring anything to my students, it's for them to have that. The rigor I want them to have is about criticality. Like, have a criticality, like always asking why, or asking questions about what they're doing, or who is it going to affect, or like, I don't know why, like what can we use our power for? How should we be using our power
Yeah.
as designers?
Yeah.
Because what the hope is that they'll then be the people that are in a workplace who are
Right.
just,
Exactly.
they have the confidence and they have the wherewithal, and like they have like they feel that they have a foundation they can stand on to ask those questions in the world.
Yeah.
Because I think it's hard. I think there's a lack of tough dialogue in the United States, overall. We don't like to be uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, we're Disney, we
Yeah.
don't we don't like
Yeah.
to be
Yeah. Yeah.
uncomfortable.
How do you do that? How do you do that in the classroom? Do you have methods or approaches to encourage that criticality and encourage that being okay with uncomfortableness?
Yeah, actually. So I mentioned the tool, so I did this workshop
Mhm.
at Otis. I think it was last September. And the tool is something that Breanne and I made, my collaborator, Breanne Trammell. It's a oversized, the flyers on the street, like, do you want to learn guitar? And it's an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with little tabs at the bottom with like the phone number.
Yep. Yep.
So we made one of those that's 1117, and it just has three very long, large tabs. And at the top, it says the stuff we're not talking about that we should be talking about. And so people fill out the tabs
Mm.
at the bottom. And that kicked off this workshop at Otis where students brought all this incredible content into the room in a very short amount of time, because the stuff that we're not talking about that we should be talking about is ultimately something that's very important to you, but that you feel for
Mm.
some reason that you're not allowed to say, or that you don't think people are saying. So it opens up the kind of difficult dialogues thing. And from
Mhm.
there, they spent the day making bumper stickers. And then at the end of the day, they translated. They were working individually, making a bunch of bumper stickers, generating a bunch of messages. And then at the end of the day, they worked in small groups to take a bumper sticker message, but put it into a new container so they could, do a billboard,
Mm.
or make a
I see.
song, or, make some sort of interactive box, or make tattoos. Like, they came up with a bunch of different stuff. The other thing is to just start the conversation yourself, and to be really honest when you don't know something, or when um, you feel like, to check in with people if something weird is happening. I don't know.
Something that I've been thinking a lot about this semester is critique methods
Mm-hmm.
and modes of critique, and how to structure the classroom critique in a way that uh, is more helpful to the students, is a way that can kind of encourage more criticality and less performance, or less of not wanting to hurt people's feelings. And so I've been experimenting with a lot of different things. And I saw that you've written about critique. You had this great kind of summary on Medium about kind of the role of critique and different critique methods. And I'm interested if kind of talking about these encouraging criticality and talking about the things that we don't want to talk about. How does that manifest itself in a critique setting, or does it, or how do you encourage that when talking about each other's work?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's something that I'm definitely still learning about all the time. I do
Yeah.
not profess to be awesome at it, but one of the things I've learned over time is just how important it is to ask the designer questions and
Yeah.
help
Yeah.
them get deeper into what it is that they're actually trying to say or do. Um, I find that the the kind of feedback that's like you could try this, you could try this, you could try this, isn't really that helpful for the designer, especially at the grad student level. They really,
Hmm.
I think they just need help usually figuring out how to. It's almost like they need help with the introspection or like digging into their own,
Right. Yeah.
why kind of thing. So
Yeah.
a lot of the lesson there, a lot of the times, is like remove your ego from the situation,
Mm.
which is, every day, it's like you have to remove your ego from a lot of situations, and it's not easy to do that, but to ask a question with no ego tied to it is a really pure and good question that you could ask. And
Mm.
it's a very generous way
Mm.
to ask a question. Um, when you're asking a question um, that is about how smart, and like to say how smart you are, everyone's been in the room with a critic or themselves who asks the question or makes a comment just to like, and it's like, oh, you
Yeah.
sound real smart, good for you. Does it help the
Right.
student? Like, I don't think so. uh,
Right.
Usually. So that's one thing.
Yeah.
And then they definitely learn a lot from each other. So shutting up is something I try to do. I'm not
Yeah.
very good
Yeah.
at it. And then I think, you know, the thing you said about not wanting to hurt people's feelings, it's not so much that as it is like being an empathetic human and like reading someone's, like being able to read a person and tell that they maybe are at the end of their ability to like absorb everything in this one moment right now. And so you, I think a good educator gives the students as much as they can handle, like in that moment, not trying to
Right.
push
Right.
people over the edge so that they're actually like so exhausted or like so defeated because,
Right.
or they are exhausted, right? Because they're sleep deprived, and then they actually
Right.
can't
Yeah. Yeah.
handle that. They can't handle that kind of feedback right now. So it's like, mm, that's okay. You don't have to give it to them right now.
Yeah. I mean, I'm even thinking about it. Just you have a group of students, 9 or 10 students, and yourself, and these topics are very intense topics that students have kind of poured themselves
Mm-hmm.
into, but then the other 9 students all have different life experiences and different understandings of that topic, and the way the student describes their topic is interpreted different ways. And so then, structuring or somehow letting a productive conversation happen that helps the student um, can be really hard
Mm-hmm.
sometimes, because you're not even talking about the work. Sometimes you're talking about the ideas behind the work. Uh, and so I think all that to say, I think you're right. I think asking questions and just that kind of humility is key. But it's something I've been thinking about a lot, and I was kind of curious how you think about it. So I think that's
Yeah, it's
interesting.
definitely something I strive to be better at, like every time. Um, it's funny because as teachers though, I just get excited about stuff. So and
Right?
then I
Yeah,
start talking. But
I know. When you said like trying to just shut up more, I was like, yeah, I have that problem
yeah,
too.
and I mean, yeah, I think it comes with the territory. If you weren't excited about
Yeah.
design, then you wouldn't be here, in this position to begin with. So,
Right. 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 Yeah, exactly. What what are you thinking about right now, or what are the issues or topics that you're excited about and kind of working on or working through in your own
Yeah,
work?
well, this weekend I'm going to Cranbrook for a
Oh,
talk
nice.
and workshop, and Breanne will be there as well. So right now I'm thinking a lot about what we're going to talk about there, and they asked us to, instead of presenting work, to present ideas. And so our take on that right
Mhm.
now is just about the way Breanne and I collaborate and where do our ideas come from, and like how much of our work is responding to things in the environment, or responding to, like, some of our work is responding directly to like a collection, like the at the University of Connecticut we had a residency and we responded to the some of the
Yeah.
ephemera in the alternative press collection, which are like buttons and stickers and patches and newspapers and things from like the 60s to the 80s. And what it's shaping up to be is this sort of like digital scrapbook of all these little snippets that you
Mm,
realize are important in the moment because they have affected you, or they touch you, or they make you laugh, or they make you really upset. And you start collecting those, either, in your mind, or in a doc, or on your desktop. And from there, we form responses, essentially, like, and they come into a graphic form, or an art form, or like a paper and ink and type form, or
mhm.
ink and image and paper form. Brienne's she's a printmaker, but she has a real strong design sensibility in her work, and she uses a lot of, a lot of printmaking actually is that way too, where it has a strong relationship to design, because you're using paper and you're using these formats that are related. The
Yeah, yeah.
technology is related, like so. So yeah, I'm thinking about
Mhm.
that, and I've been thinking about, like, something I struggle with a lot is just like, what's the best way to contribute? How can I best contribute, like, in as a designer, because I live in San Francisco and I have to make money um, to live here. But who could I be giving my skills and time to that it would really be like helping something,
Mhm,
And
mhm,
I don't know,
mhm.
that's at the end of the day, like, helping someone. Like, I worked at Honor before, which is a health care company, it's like an elder care company, where it's
Okay.
an app that helps small businesses who provide in-home senior care. It basically helps them organize the back end of the business, and facilitates the actual visits. Like, with the technology, you can sort of like understand, oh, this person has a dog, and make sure that they drink water when they take their medicine, and
Mm.
they need to go
Yeah,
for a walk every day. Like, sort of like keeps a record of those type of things, communication record, basically. But so
yeah,
at the end of the
right.
day, it felt good to contribute to something that's essentially helping older folks who need assistance, like, have the assistance that they need. Like, that feels really good, you know.
Right,
But
right, right.
there's just something weird about designers, where we always feel like, I think there's a lot of designers that feel like they want to change something or make the world better. Or even there's a lot of like people in tech who say they want to change the world, and it's like, maybe you shouldn't, But also,
Yeah, yeah,
uh, I think there's just a great responsibility that comes with being a designer, and I don't always feel like I'm making work or contributing to something that's actually good at the end of the day.
Do you
I
think
feel good about teaching, and I feel good about the work I make with Brienne, because it's at least talking
yeah.
about ideas that are harder to talk about.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I feel like, don't you think teaching is also a way that you're helping people? And, like, like you said earlier, that, by encouraging that criticality, you see these students as people in the future who will be in these jobs that can
I do.
Do something or say something. I mean, at least like as you were talking about that, I was feeling like that's how I've thought about my work for a long time. I was like, what is the point of all this? Why does this matter? And as soon as I started teaching, I felt like I was like, oh, this is actually how I can contribute and help
Yeah,
people.
no, I mean, teaching is a very precious thing. And it's very like, I feel that it's like holy work. I'm not religious, but it's like, it's
Yeah.
what educators give students is like, oh, here's some, like, here, let me help you, to the next stepping stone with design, or here, let me teach you like a few things about design. What students give educators is like themselves. Like students like
Yeah.
show you
Yeah.
like who they are. Like that's beyond like a precious gift and experience that we get to have every week. That's like, I'm
Yeah.
aware. But I also have a little bit of conflicted feelings about higher education and how expensive art school is, and are we just training people to get jobs that contribute to capitalism? Like if you're going to a school like a CCA or a RISD or a MICA, uh, if
Mm-hmm.
you don't come from extreme privilege, what are you going to do? You're going to get a job at a big company. And that's what design is. I don't know. This has gotten sad and dark.
I know. I was so excited. I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be the perfect way to end this. Is we're gonna end on this like really nice,
Let's do it over.
beautiful message about teaching and helping people." And then it just turned, and now I feel like
Just cut the. Can you cut the last part off then?
yeah, we can do that. Anyway, I think that's such a nice, lovely way uh, to wrap up this conversation. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I really enjoyed this.
Thank you for having me. I've been a fan for a while, so it's really nice to be on the inside the pod.
Oh, I hope it was worth. I hope it was worth
Yeah,
it.
definitely.
This episode was recorded on October 2nd, 2019. Our theme music is by Andy Borgasani. We're on Twitter and Instagram at Surface Podcast. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and at scratchingthesurface.fm. Thanks for listening.